Good evening and welcome. You're watching Left, Right and Center with me, Sanket Upadhyay. Two important stories that we are going to track right here on this show. Story number one. We are all too familiar with pictures of apathy, civic apathy, pictures of people suffering in, big cities, urban planning being questioned repeatedly, one little rain and all the planning exposed, people losing their lives. Imagine. Over the past 1 week, we have heard of people being electrocuted because the rain got connected, a wire was exposed in the open, and because of the rain, people stepped on it and they were electrocuted. 440 volts of current. This has happened twice in the national capital in the past 3 to 4 days. And then, of course, when it is monsoon, those repeated pictures of people drowning in the manhole because the cover was missing. Now, all these are very basic things. Apart from that, if we take a broader picture, the fact that buildings are not conforming to the building code, very poor quality of construction, people upset with the quality of the road. This is just a sample of an individual's life in city after city after city in this country. So what exactly should happen? Well, for urban planning, there was a proposal from the government where some money was allocated, a high-powered committee was formed and they were supposed to submit a report. Now they have already submitted their report. They say in their report that just like IAS and IPS officers, for urban planning you should have a separate force, a separate association of people, a separate service. Will that really be a big solution? That is what we are going to discuss over here on discussion number one. Failing infrastructure and towering apathy, how to make our cities livable, because obviously they have to be livable. We cannot be in a situation where people get electrocuted or they die and then we move on, business as usual. Why? Because it keeps on happening. Every year we keep hearing about these things. That has to change. Story number two on this show. The Madras High Court came up with a very, very interesting observation. They said that you have to acknowledge the work that is being done by a housewife. They don't get paid, but if a man is earning money and then amassing wealth or property in his name, then why not acknowledge the work done by the housewife, which is equally important? And thus the observation was that the housewife should have a say in that property, which means she should be a co-owner. Now that's a very interesting proposition, but how will it work out in real life? How do you implement something like this? One gets the spirit of what is being said. We'll get into all these aspects later on the show when we debate homemakers is equal to homeowners. Is it now time to acknowledge the work and worth of the mighty housewife? That discussion is going to come up in just a short moment from now. But before we introduce our guest on discussion number one, let's quickly make you listen to this interview of Mr. Keshav Verma. Now, who is he? He's a former IAS officer. He's part of a 10-member panel. Remember, in 22-23, the Finance Ministry committed they in fact set up a high-level committee for urban planning. And he was part of this committee. He has submitted a report where he suggests that there should be a separate service. Let's listen into this exclusive interview.
So we need, civil service. There are almost 50,000 civil servants across the country to understand the value of well-managed cities. That is critical. They should not look at it as a problem or a kind of a, casual look at it. They have to understand the value of, and not only the large cities. Because here, the importance of small cities, tier 2 and tier 3 cities are also critical. Because they will continue to play a role if we do good quality regional planning.
Joining us right now on this discussion, Jagdish Mamgain, Urban Affairs expert. Sudhir Krishna is a former Secretary, Urban Development of the Government of India. We also have D. Dhanuraj, Chairman of the Center for Public Policy Research, CPPR. and Professor Bejon Kumar Mishra, Professor at the National Law University and founder of Consumer Online Foundation, a consumer policy expert as well. Thank you very much. In just a short moment, we'll be joined in by Raj Bhagat Palanichami also, a senior manager at Geoanalytics Sustainable Cities, WRI, India. Mr. Mamgen, I want to begin with you first. You know, this proposal to end urban apathy, to perhaps have better infrastructure planning, urban planning, to have a separate service. According to you, how much does something like this help?
It can help, but it is not necessary that we have to, in all cities, particularly in municipalities, in PWDs, we have engineers who are specialized for this work and they are doing the job, but apathy is there. And apathy is there because, first of all, we have to see that there are pressure on the cities. People come here from villages, from towns to upgrade their life, to better their life. Migration is going on in the whole of the country and the cities are pressurized. So population pressure, first of all, we have to contain the population pressure, number one. Number two, the municipalities, which is major stakeholders in development, they are either financially bankrupt or defunct. Only 1 or 2 corporations in India are at par. Rest of the corporations are financially bankrupt. Corporation is to implement the building bylaws. Corporation has to look after the infrastructure. Corporation has to make the buildings, roads, everything. And the corporation which are financially not viable, then you can say, you can report this committee also recommend some suggestions, but suggestions has to be come on the street, and when it will be then when we are financially viable. There are mainly three stakeholders: local government, state government, and central government. We always make a plan, the committees at the center level or at the state level, but it should come from the local level. Every area, every local system has various kinds of problem and various kinds of specifications.
Correct.
Land issue is there. We should take the problem, or we should take the recommendation from the local level, then zonal level, then state, and then it should be compiled by the center. Then only we can make a better recommendations, or we can make a better urban infrastructure system.
Okay.
And urban infrastructure depends on the village development. If our villages, if our towns are strengthened, if there is no
then
migration,
the cities will
pressure
not feel this pressure of a
yes,
population explosion. I think that's an important point that you made.
Viable.
Yeah, Sudhir Krishna is also with us. He's also the chairman of the committee on standards for smart cities. Mr. Krishna, you see, I mean, not taking away from the contribution of bureaucrats, but do you feel that yet another layer of bureaucracy is going to help in better and more effective urban planning?
I think the need for strengthening the planning arrangements in cities and the surrounding areas is without question. But the thing is that, do we really require a cadre which is controlled and supervised by the Prime Minister? I think that much heavy approach may not be required, because it is a local issue. Planning is a local issue, and very much local issue. It is like municipalities. No? Municipalities are local issues, state subject, and town planning is also a state subject, except when we have National Capital Region Planning Board, where National Capital Region spreads to more than one state, and therefore with the consent of the states, a law was made, National Capital Regional Planning Act was made, and therefore a centralized Government of India, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs got a foothold in managing the NCR area. Otherwise, where the cities are there, where the local areas are there, states are in the best position as per the constitutional provisions. Now the question is that why the cities are in mess, as you are rightly pointed out. And there are two aspects to it. One is planning and second is the day-to-day maintenance. Day-to-day maintenance is done by the municipal corporations. The potholes on the roads, they are not really fault of planning. To some extent it could be, but mainly it is the fault of poor management. Similarly, the issue of drain flooding of the roads, etc., is all because of poor maintenance, and there are IAS officers in the municipal corporation, so that is not an issue. The issue is that town planning requires strengthening for the planning purposes and the staffing. So for the planning, Government of India has introduced the guidelines, what is called URBPFI guidelines. That is the Urban and Regional Planning Development Formulation Implementation Guidelines. Now, these guidelines have to be enforced. They have to be updated, all right. They were issued in 2014-15. They have to be updated. They have been marginally updated also. So the Government of India has to enforce that state government's town planning regulations must align with the guidelines issued. And the guidelines themselves should be subject to improvement from time to time. It has to be done in a collaborative federal setup mode with a strong influence, like we did in the JNNURM program, Amrut program, where Government of India introduced policy changes through the state government without enforcing a cadre of, Government of India officers. It was done by the influencing the Government of India's budgetary support you will get, provided you improve or modify your planning guidelines. Similarly, this can be done also. So I would say that, and as of now, a planning cadre is not just one cadre. We have got in the city, any city you get development authority, you get city corporation, you have town planning department, you have district collector, you have urban arts commission, and you have Shahari Vikas Nigam, you have water board, you have sanitation board. So I mean, this is a complex situation we have developed. So we have to allow the states, encourage the states to integrate their system and manage it well.
Yeah, I think you've explained this really well, Mr. Krishna, on the system that already exists. And the point is, Professor Mishra, that if these systems operate on their own and if they deliver, a lot of these problems would be solved. For instance, why do you need a separate cadre? I mean, not taking away from the suggestion, but for the people, two people in Delhi over the past 3 days have got electrocuted because obviously there was a problem on the road. The drains were not clean and there was water logging, and that led to open wires, suspended wires, that led to electrocution. Now, do you see, I don't think you need a cadre for people to know that wires must be hidden, properly insulated, or that drains must be desilted so that there is no water logging. So it's less of a cadre doing its job, but more of people who are already assigned to do their jobs, that they do it with stronger rules, proper implementation, punitive action, and absolutely zero corruption. I believe the exact opposite happens.
Absolutely. Sanket, let me first give a disclaimer. Whatever I am speaking on the channel, it's my personal view.
Yeah.
It has got nothing to do with the universities with which I am attached to.
Yeah.
So I would like to make that very clear.
Sure. As a consumer policy expert.
Yeah. I have come here as an individual. I'll give my own views.
Yeah.
Sanket, the most important issue is lack of leadership to deliver. I was born and brought up in a city called Jamshedpur. I spent 43 years there, and I saw how the Tatas have managed that city. It is absolutely unique. People have to visit that place to learn how a town planning is conducted, how planning is done, because the buzzword is planning. You have to ensure that you plan. You have to ensure that there is a lot of accountability. You have to ensure that you engage with the citizens in terms of their amenities, and all amenities have to be provided 24/7 and to the highest quality level. You see, in our country, BIS has got all the standards. You name them. Quality Council of India is now taking up an initiative in terms of developing a model, quality city. Now, a lot of pilots are going on, and my contention is, Sanket, a cadre will not help. I don't undermine the recommendation given, but I don't think cadres help in our country. I have been a committee member of several government bodies where we have given several recommendations and it is catching dust. the most important issue is how do you provide a leadership to ensure that we plan ahead of time, so that even if we all know the projections of population, migration, it's not a rocket science to plan a good, beautiful city, because we have talented people, youngsters, who are going out of the country to be used in terms of their talent overseas. But we are not able to use them in my own country because we have not created an environment where people would get recognized, people will have the freedom to work in the manner they need to be given a freedom, so that there is nobody breathing over their shoulder all the time. We have to involve all partners. We have to involve all stakeholders to build a good city. And that is what is lacking. My experience has been that we have spent huge amount of money, huge, in terms of infrastructure, in building infrastructure in the cities. You go and look at them today, they are all in shambles. Just because there was no accountability in terms of maintenance. You gave some beautiful examples. You know, why do people get electrocuted? Accidents can happen, but we cannot be negligent. We cannot be found negligent. We have to make sure there is a backup, there is a surveillance system, there is a system which takes care of the safety and the life of the citizens. We have to bring in these kind of mechanisms. And as you know, some of you, we have been very lucky to visit, countries like Singapore, countries like Seoul. What do we go and see there? Precision. Why this precision? Because there is a scare in the people who are engaged to deliver. They all know that if they don't deliver, their heads will roll.
Yeah,
stringent action will be taken.
Exactly.
Which is lacking in my country. You see, unfortunately, Sanket, and that is what is required, not a cadre. Please do not build again a layer of,
one more layer to do what we can already do.
Which becomes inefficient and becomes a burden on the...
So I think it's very interesting from Mr. Sudhir Krishna to Professor Mishra, both suggesting that perhaps a cadre may not be the best solution. Whether it helps or not, one does not know. D. Dhanuraj is also with us. You see, Mr. Dhanuraj, let's take the example of Bengaluru, for instance. A couple of years ago, heavy rain and all the houses in low-lying areas and some extremely VIP colonies, beautiful homes, crores and crores of money spent, all of them inundated, right? Now, all of this happened because lake land was used for construction. Now, you tell me which cadre or what can any cadre do if something as simple as this in urban planning, that obviously if you will construct a house on a lake bed and when it rains, nature will follow its course.
Sanjay, the problem here is, I think we are so confused with the idea of urbanization. We are not so sure about how our urban local bodies should function. What are the powers? What is their capacity? What kind of roles and responsibilities they should play in the modern, urbanized world? I think having experience in JNNURM and smart city projects for the last 16, 17 years, I don't think we learn from our mistakes, or probably we are not trying to understand where the problem lies with. Whether we are giving more power to the mayors and city councils, or we are adding one more layer, even though we have commissioners and secretaries, IAS officers sitting there in all the local bodies. Do we need another cadre? Will it help in sustenance and maintenance of the cities? I don't think so. Reason is that most of the cities lack coordination, they lack power, they lack resources. And most of the times, most of the things are happening from a top-down, in a top-down approach model, meaning many things are imposed on them. Many projects are driven by the funds given by the state governments and central governments. So decisions are mostly taken at the different level, not understanding the city landscape and architecture and the history and environment of the cities. So I believe this cadre, what is proposed, is nothing to do with, it's not going to help the cities to mitigate the challenges they are facing these days. I think what we need to do is we have to strengthen, capacity. We have to enable them, empower them to tackle these issues. We are talking about livability in a city. The livability of city is not driven by an IAS officer. It's a configuration and combination of various factors that keep changing, and we can't disconnect from the history, we can't disconnect from the local festivals, or we can't disconnect from the mobility features, we can't disconnect from the labor and land available in the city. So the problem here is that our cities don't have the systems or institutions and the strength to address this thing. We don't have the data most of the time. So think about it. We started this command and control center with smart city projects. Most of the cities that I work with, I see that the command and control system is with somebody else. The city municipal corporation doesn't have the idea what to do with the command and control center. Even if they have the access to the data they generate, they don't have the expertise, or they don't have the manpower, skilled, qualified manpower to access the data. Many of the cities, I think India requires thousands and thousands of town planners, thousands of economists to work in the city system. But the problem here is most of the state level and municipality act that came after 73rd and 74th amendment, I think we are not ready to revisit some of them. We are not given enough power to the cities as per the 73rd and 74th amendment. We have not given them enough resources to strengthen it. Most of the cities don't have the right to even recruit people, because the city force, the city manpower, they come from the state governments, or they are deputed from some of the departments. In many cities, commissioners and secretaries are not ready to occupy the seats given to them, because they don't think that's a very glamorous post. Right. So I think in 2047, when we celebrate this Amrit Kaal, what we need to understand is that India's growth actually lies in cities, and we are going to modernize and urbanize like anything. Probably we will be the fastest growing
and it has to be sustainable.
Urban
It cannot be
country
abrupt. For instance, many of the urban agglomerations in New Delhi, for instance, the metro towns of Noida, Gurugram, Faridabad. I mean, Dr. Bejon Mishra, you see, Professor Mishra, pardon my extremely dark humor, which I am going to share with you guys, but this is the reality. I mean, I run the risk of driving a car on a potholed road where I will encounter waterlogged drains, where I will cross a fumbling flyover. I run the risk of a bridge collapsing, and it has happened. We have seen it in Bihar. Only yesterday we saw it in Hastinapur also, the road caved in. I also run the risk of encountering electrocution from a lamppost, and when I reach home to my building, I do not, since the building has not had any structural audit, there is a risk that the floor will collapse, as it happens in Chintal Paradiso in Gurugram. So right from my journey from office to home, there is a problem each step of the way in the city.
Huge risk. You see, we are leading a life which is risk driven. We must understand that we are not taken care. Our risk is never taken care. There is no accountability. There is no transparency in work. We all have to understand on our own perceptions what's going on. Nobody wants to make information public. You see, there are a number of issues which has actually culminated in this kind of a culture in the country. What we all have to understand is, before you start a township, like you gave the example of Gurugram. Now, I know there are colonies in Gurugram where the builders have built the colony, but they don't have electricity for 14 hours a day. Now, what do you do to that? And how do you take care of the citizens who have invested their hard-earned money for a shelter, and they are not being given energy 24/7? They don't have potable drinking water to be provided to them. They are dependent on the so-called water purifiers and all that, gadgets, which again cost a lot of money to the common citizen. Now, the issue is, Sanket, is that we have to demand. I hope the recommendation has gone in that manner, because I have not had privy to that recommendation, that the bodies have to be made accountable. The municipalities, or whichever is the agency which needs. We have now regulators in place, whether it's electricity, whether it's water, we have, whether it's RERA, we have all authorities which are regulatory authorities who are supposed to.
I mean, authorities are there. You will always find that some authority or the other will be there, but they will also be lots and lots of problems. And I don't think another layer of bureaucracy is really going to help, is the sense that I get after speaking to all you gentlemen. But Mr. Sudhir Krishna, quickly coming back and drawing your attention to a very recent example. For instance, in Noida, only this Sunday, a beautiful signature bridge was inaugurated, right? 6 lanes, brilliant, fabulous. It looks fantastic. A hanging bridge on both sides. But what that bridge did was it transferred the traffic jam from one crossing to the next. So while this crossing was decongested, the next crossing got the traffic jam. So my point is, do you feel that this is the big problem that we are facing?
So this is really a problem, and the solution lies in having a strong local governance. City is a very living entity, and very dynamically living also. It goes on expanding. There is no way we can stop migration to cities. The problem is that, the governance of the city is so fragmented. I mentioned earlier that we have got so many authorities, and every city has got at least 4 IAS officers in different, somebody will be development authority head, and somebody will be, collector will be there, and there will be a couple of other positions in Gurgaon itself. So many. So one more, a senior authority is not going to solve the problem. Why not we have a strong mayor who understands the city in all its dimensions? Because line department officers understand their line department work. Somebody, NHAI or some authority, road authority is given task to develop a signature bridge, and they will do a fantastic job, as you said, but they will not understand how it would organically link with the city as a whole, both in terms of mobility as well as side effects of mobility. Side effect of mobility means how the city's spread will be impacted. Okay. That will be known by, I do not know why we are not able to have a strong mayor. A world over, you name the city, even if you go to Russia, Moscow mayor, you go to China, the mayor of Beijing or Shanghai, you go to Paris, you go to London, the mayor is so very important that he is next only to the prime minister in that country. That is the significance of mayor. And here in our country, where is the mayor? If people are if any gathering is there, official gathering, do you think that mayor will be sitting next to the highest authority there? No. So therefore, these are the situations. Creating one more layer is going to only confuse the matter further. Yeah. We are spending much more money than ever before in cities. 50 years before, the cities were crying for money. Today, many cities have got umpteen resources coming in, but not to the municipal corporation, coming under different routes. They are not integrating. Neither the governance is integrating, nor the fund flow is integrating, nor the planning procedures are integrating.
In a situation like this, we are going to create extremely confused cities and extremely frustrated citizens. For instance, the heart goes out to the family of that girl, 35-year-old girl who was electrocuted at the New Delhi railway station. She was going to take a train, the Vande Bharat train, to Chandigarh. She was very excited about the Vande Bharat train, brand new train, but she got electrocuted outside the railway station. That is the quality of our urban planning. Do we want cities like this? I think it's a question that all of us have to ask of ourselves.